Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, season 2, all about winning. Here with Chad Himes and Bob Stewart. My name is Ben Kinney, and we are knee-deep into the talent series.
Bob, you notice we're knee-deep now.
Hey.
We're not ankle-deep anymore. We're knee-deep now.
So I've definitely got my shoes off at this point. My shoes are off. They're on the sidelines. They're clean. All right, we're good. Let's do it.
It's getting deeper, but not so deep that you can tell how cold the water is. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the talent series. So far, we have dove into the intro into talent. We went into finding talent and talked about a 3-step approach to generating all the leads and contacts and candidates that you need to take through the hiring process. And on the last episode, we made it 50% through the hiring process. The hiring process, starting with step 1, a screening call. If that goes good, yes or no. If yes, to the next step, which is the initial first face-to-face or Zoom interview, probably 30 minutes to an hour, where you dive through the life story and start seeing if this person's a potential match for your company and if you're a potential match for the candidate. If that goes good, you're going to say yes or no. If yes, we're going to continue to sending out a behavioral assessment. And Chad, we talked about a variety of options they could send out, like
the DISC, Myers-Briggs, the Strength Finders. There's so many of them, Ben.
Okay. Now, the next step is getting back together after you've both had some time to process and think about this. You've gone through a screening call, you've gone through life history, you've spent an hour so far just on the interview, you've had them take a behavioral assessment, so they spend an extra half hour, 45 minutes doing that. You all have some time invested in the candidate. Now you're going to invite them back in for the second interview.
All right. How much time is happening between interview 1 to behavioral assessment? I'm imagining is very quick. Like, hey, this went great. Bob, we're going to send you this link. We want you to do it before the day is over. How much time, though, between Bob completing this behavioral assessment and interview 2?
Here's what I think is important, that you allow time between the steps to process, think about it, give people homework to see how they respond, and then you do the next step. You can force this in a day or two if you needed to, but I love spending time to process, think, work through questions, allow them to think, do research, etc. It'll make a better hire or you to be more confident in your hire.
Have you found, through yourself or others that you coach, train, teach to do this, have you found that I'm really excited coming out of this interview with Bob? This guy's awesome. Like, he interviewed really well. His behavioral test looks good. But because I forced a week before that interview, that it's allowed me to cool down so that I'm coming from a more rational place as employer and not just hiring Bob because, well, we got along and he seems like a really cool guy. I just want to get to the next step and hire him.
Here's what I would say. You all might write this down. What Chad is describing is when you fall in love with the candidate instead of the process. Fall in love with the process, not the candidate.
Oh.
Now,
say it one more time. They don't have to hit the rewind button. Just say that one more time.
Fall in love with the process, not the candidate. One of the ways that you fall in love with a candidate is you have only one. When you have only one candidate that you're interviewing, you spend the entire time proving to yourself that this is a great hire. When you have 3 amazing candidates that have all made it through screening, first interview, behavioral assessment, then you spend the entire rest of this process deciding which of the 3 is the best hire. Key difference right there, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I took a job once that I remember they said they've been looking for 2 years for the person to fill the role. And it just spoke volumes about they were doing their due diligence and not going to just hire anybody for the role. They were taking their time before they found the right person for the role.
Yeah.
So it means a lot to the employee as well as it can and should to the employer.
I love promoting people in our company, and I love hiring people I already know, because then I've spent a month, a week, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, my entire life, getting to know the screening interview, their behavior, all these things. I've invested long periods of time. So then when you get to these next steps, it's all about, are they the right candidate for this role? And is the company the right thing for them at the moment? Make sense?
Absolutely. So you're saying part one, they might check all the boxes. Part two, they might not, which means, okay, they're going back in the folder, though, for future opportunities. They might just not fit this role, but I've gotten them past part one, which was, would I want to work with them?
Most likely by the time they got here, they're either an amazing actor or actress and they fooled you, or they're a great candidate for a role. It just might not be your role.
Got it.
So now we're in the second interview. We'll call them up and say, Chad, really appreciate the time that we spent together. I would love to spend a little bit more time. I like to go through the behavioral assessment. And I asked you on our last meeting if you write down a list of questions and concerns and thoughts, and for you to do a little bit of research about the company. I'd like us to get together and spend some time face-to-face if possible, taking the next step in our journey of finding out if we're a match for each other. When would you have an hour to 2 hours available where you are 100% free of worry or stress or pressure, and you could be full of energy and showing the best version of yourself? When's good for you? Now, they might say, well, the only time I have is after work. Are you exhausted after work normally? Yeah, it's really hard. It takes a lot out of me. That's probably not the best time for you to show me the best version of yourself. Do you have some way that you can come in before work or come into work 2 hours late, something like that? So I'm setting the stage on what I expect and what we're going to cover and how much time I want.
You know what I liked in there also? You reminded them of their homework if they forgot their homework without making them feel bad about the fact that, oh yeah, I was supposed to write down some questions. I was supposed to do some research before we get back together. You did a really good job of subtly dropping that in that conversation and making me say, oh crap, I haven't done this yet. I really wanted to do this.
And notice I said write down some questions.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come into the meeting, I might say, do me a favor, pull out the questions you wrote down.
Sure.
If they didn't do that, that tells me something about them right there, doesn't it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now we're in the second interview.
Okay. What's different the second interview from the first one? So the first one was the life story, as you put it. What's the second interview, if you had to title it?
The second interview is going to be about understanding their goals,
Okay.
their dreams,
Okay.
a deep dive into their behavior, because you're going to jump into the assessment,
Yep.
and describe a little bit more about the role and what you think might be matches or not matches, and address any of those concerns.
Okay.
But before we start that, here's a few things that I'll give you as like pre-work for this. Number
Okay.
one, have a Sharpie and a bunch of paper in the room with you.
I think if we made a drinking game out of the Win Make Give podcast, it'd be every time Ben mentions Sharpie and a pad of paper.
For sure. Sharpie should definitely sponsor this podcast, which has no sponsors and has no advertisers. But here's why. When you write with a pen, like a ball point pen,
Yeah, a regular pen.
regular pen,
Yep.
it's really small and it's hard for the person to see. I want them to see what I'm writing. And in fact, when I sit them down, I'd say, would it be okay if I took notes again today? And the blank paper and the Sharpie allows them to see exactly what I'm writing.
Okay.
Many times I'll even give it to them or take pictures of it and text it to them, or I'll take the pictures and give them the paper copy, whatever that might be.
Okay. Are
The
you
other
sitting
thing-
across from them? Or you doing the, hey, I
The-
should sit 90 degrees on the table sort of thing?
The other thing is I never sit them on the other side of like the boss desk.
There you go.
If the only space I have to meet is a boss desk, that's where like one side is for the boss, the other side is
Absolutely.
for the person.
Yep.
I pull to the side of the desk and I'm at an angle towards them, a little bit closer, but not in that boss desk position.
So that's why in your office, you have a round table for
Yep.
these situations. And if for some reason you didn't, you might take them to a conference room where you guys could sit around, not the intimidating boss desk.
Sometimes I don't even use my blank paper, my Sharpie. Sometimes I use a flip chart or a whiteboard,
Yep.
and I will write exactly what they say up on the board.
Seen you do it.
Yeah. It's just a way that we're setting the atmosphere. I bring in snacks, drinks, everything that I need to make sure that we're comfortable. I visually show them that I'm turning my phone off or putting it on silent just because I expect the same thing from them. And I will often take my phone and put it face down so I can't even see who's calling.
Bob, maybe we need to be interviewing with him more often to get his attention sometime.
I feel like that was a jab. So
was.
now we're in the second interview. Bob Stewart. Today, let's walk through a little bit what I'd like to cover.
Okay.
I'd like to talk a little bit about some of your goals and some of your dreams, where you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years. I want to dive into the behavioral assessment that I sent you prior and you completed. Thank you for that, by the way. And I want to talk a little bit about the role and what we think might be matches or not matches for this particular role. I do want to let you know that anything I ask you today, I'm willing to answer the same thing back to you. If you would like to see my behavioral assessment, I would love to give you a copy of mine. If you want to ask me about our goals or dreams or anything I ask you, you can ask me. Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
At any time I ask you a question that you do not feel comfortable answering, that's okay with me. There'll be no penalty for that. I want you to simply say, can I pass on that one? And I'll say, yeah, no problem. Seem fair?
Yep.
So on a piece of paper, I will literally take a piece of paper and on top, I will write business.
He's doing it right now. I mean, he's actually, it's such a script and a routine to him. I'm watching
He's got
Ben
40
as he's writing
Sharpies and a stack of 5,000 pieces of white paper.
You possibly, if Dave turned the volume up, could hear Ben writing as he just wrote. I can tell you from here, I'm across the room from him. It looks like business. I think I see finance already coming as the second thing. I'm what, 10 feet away from you at least, and I can read that upside down, which is why Ben's saying he's writing in Sharpie so that I'm not sitting over here going, what's he writing about me? What's he writing about me? I can clearly read it.
At the top of the paper, I wrote business.
Yep.
And then finances or financial.
Yep.
And then personal. And then I'll write health. And then I'll write relationships. Bob, what I'd like to do today is I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking to you about your goals and getting to understand what's important to you in your world and who's important to you, and see how our company or how I personally could be a part of making that a reality. So the first thing I want to start with is tell me a little bit about your career goals. What is it that you want to accomplish in business or in your career? Let's say in the next year. And Bob's going to say, bleh. I'll say, great. What about in 3 years or 5 years? And I'm looking to see, where does he see himself in the company? He might see himself in 1 year doing a great job in this job, but in 2 or 3 years not working here, doing something else. And that could be a flag for me to say, hey, I need a bigger world to keep him, or he might not be a match for me. Then number 2, I'm going to go into, let's talk a little bit about your financial goals. What is it that you would need to make in order to accept an offer? And what is it that you would want to make?
2 clear distinctions, need and want.
Second, tell me a little bit about your financial situation, if you feel comfortable sharing. Remember, I'll share with you as well. Do you have any other sources of income? Tell me about your assets. Do you track your net worth? Do you have a lot of debt? Is that something that we talk a lot in our company, and we have training, we have the Wealth Series, there's things that we work on. So tell me a little bit about your financial world. What would you like to change about that? When's your goal to have all that debt paid off? Do you own any real estate? I might ask some of those questions because then I have something for him to get excited about. Number 3, not about family or kids or spouses or partners or anybody else. Tell me something selfish that you would like to do for you this year. You want to learn something? Do you want to buy something? Do you want to do something? What's important to you? And he might say, I want to run a Spartan race.
All right, you just committed.
Or I want to buy a new car, or I want to own a house.
Golf lessons is
or I
probably
want to
more
learn to
up my
golf,
alley.
or I want to play the piano. That's awesome. I'm getting to know that person personally.
Sure.
Next, health. Do you have any health goals? And I don't push hard on this. Just what is it? What are your health goals? Well, I like to exercise more often. Awesome. How often would you like to do that? That's great. Any other health goals? Well, I'd like to blah, blah, blah. Great. And I write them down. Last one, relationships. Do you have any goals for anybody in your life? You don't have to say names or anything else. Do you have any goals for anybody in your life on something you would like to do for them this year, 3 years, 5 years? What does that sound like? Well, he might say, I want to take my kids to Disneyland, or I want to buy a house, or I want to put money away for college, right? And I get through and I just identified goals for business career, financial goals, personal goals, health goals, and who's important to him in his life. By doing that, Chad, what else have I validated about this person? What did you learn about the fake conversation I just had with Bob that he didn't give any answers to?
What's it? No idea.
Bob, what could I learn asking people about their goals since Chad is worthless?
You could learn how you might be able to help deliver those.
How the role in our company could help him accomplish these things. What else?
Yeah. You get a pretty good sense for, like, does he even have, I think a lot of people, you ask them those 3 to 5 year stuff and the answers they haven't been well thought out. So you might realize this is a person that hasn't really even mapped out what their life might be. And maybe we can help them with that.
Do you learn about their values?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How do you learn about their values, Chad?
Well, you're going to see who they value. You're going to see what they're putting priority on. You're going to see what things matter and don't matter in their world from going through these questions.
Yeah. Can you see are they a big thinker or a small thinker?
Absolutely, you'll see it. You're going to see where they get themselves in trouble, where they have strengths, where they have weaknesses. You're going to learn financially they're a disaster or financially they're set. So does that help you? Doesn't that help you? What decisions do they make? What are their relationship goals? Do they have any?
Do you guys think we'd learn about their communication skills?
You would absolutely learn about it, taking them through this on how well they cover their answers and know their themselves.
Yeah, we would learn about their integrity, their values, their work ethic, their goals, their communication skills. You just learn so much. But here's the thing that I think you'll learn by doing this with somebody. It's probably the first time that person has been asked about this as an adult. You're the first person that's ever taken the time to understand their career goals, their financial goals, health, relationships, and actually listen and take notes. It might be the first time that they've ever actually even written this down. The first time. You haven't spoke about your company almost at all yet. You're simply talking to them about goals. You could look at that and say, do I feel like this role is a match? I might also look at it, Chad, and say, you know what? I don't think they can afford to take this job. They talk to me about their debt and how much money they need to put away for their kids' college and these other things they want to do. And you might simply say, hey, this particular position pays in this range. Doing the simple math, I don't know if that's going to get you where you want to be. Have you thought about that? And they might be like, no, I've never done that math. Well, don't you think you would regret taking a position in this pay scale? I guess you're right. And then you might have an alternative position or an alternative suggestion or permission to reach back out to them in the future about it.
Okay, so you caught me way off guard with that question. I'm going to tell you part of the reason you caught me off guard with it. I was still stuck on a comment you made way back when. And you were talking about the business goals for Bob right at the beginning as you were interviewing him. And maybe what you're saying is his 1-year goals are great, but 2-3-year goals don't fit in your organization. And you're going to have to decide right then, is that a stop point or is that an opportunity for you to create a bigger world? Can you talk about that for a minute? Because when you get talent, that's something we're all going to have to be thinking about, is creating a bigger world for our talent to survive in. So before you go on with this hiring process, will you just go back to that comment you made and just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Let's say the person's business and financial goals are to make $100,000 and in 3 years to make 150 and in 5 years to make X. I might circle back and say, hey, just out of curiosity, you said that you might want to own your own business to do your own things in the future. But I tied it back to your finances. If we could find a way while working together that you could hit those financial goals and you continue to grow and you're putting money away for college and you're taking the kids there and you're learning how to hula hoop or whatever else you said that was important to you, Do you think you'd have any reason to leave? Do you think you would be willing to put this, instead of just starting your own business, to be in business with us? Do you think that would be enough for you? And I could draw it back and have a real heart-to-heart conversation.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yeah. And then you're creating opportunities within your world to keep them within your world because they're talent.
Or I'm asking myself the question, what kind of results would this person have to get if for me to feel validated in paying that sort of compensation?
Okay.
And I might just be blunt and say, you know what? You can make as much money as you want at our company. However, these are the results that you'd have to get in this role to do that.
Okay.
This is the first start of the second interview.
Yep.
The goal and dreams piece.
Okay.
The second part of this interview would be the behavioral assessment. That's where you go through the Myers-Briggs, the KPA, the DISC, whatever they might be, strength finders.
Yep.
And you just spend some time. Bob, thank you for taking the behavioral assessment. Let's talk a little bit about what it said about you. It said that you were a super high D. We gave Bob the DISC assessment. Bob, do you know what a super high D, what's important to them?
Results.
Yeah, results and speed. They want things done in a super timely manner, right? Do you think that that is accurately reflects you, that you're a results-driven individual?
Yes.
Then you go through each one of the sentences that are in the assessment. It also says, Bob, that you have a very, very low I. It doesn't mean you don't love or like people. It means that you don't need people to get energy. Sometimes people with a low I are actually called introverts. Would you consider yourself an introvert?
No.
No. Interesting. And you could dive a little bit deeper. And when he says no, I might say, great, give me an example sometime recently when you have not been an introvert. And Bob might say, well, I went to this wedding and I spent a half hour talking to people and I talked to everybody. So awesome. How'd you feel afterwards?
Exhausted.
I was exhausted. You're an introvert. Right? S wants safety and security. A C, right? They want an attention to detail. How do you know if somebody's a D, I, S, or C? Here's what happens is they walk up to, we have a D, an I, an S, and a C with us, Chad, and we're at the crosswalk. The D continues to press the button to get the crosswalk thing to change.
Come on, I've already crossed the street. Forget pressing the button.
The I doesn't realize that the crosswalk light changed because they're still talking.
Yes.
The high S grabs everybody and says, wait, there's still a car coming. They haven't fully stopped. And the C is counting the number of steps it takes to get across the street or the time between the light sessions.
Well, there goes our whole podcast episode just on the DISC profile right there, Ben.
We need to understand that behavior doesn't limit a person, but it does give you some understanding if they might enjoy, get energy, or be able to survive a specific role. That would be things like
So you're not going to hire an introvert to be a trainer in your organization because you know that you're probably going to, or they probably are going to use a lot of their energy and not be as happy in the role. Whereas Bob is absolutely a trainer in the organization. He gets his energy from that. He's a perfect fit in that
not
regard.
a low I.
we probably
you're
wouldn't
not.
hire Bob to land the plane because he doesn't have a great attention to detail.
Right.
There's some roles that require a great attention to detail. Accounting, planes, architects, software programmers.
Right.
You don't want things to mess up in the middle.
You don't want me building your house.
The last part of the second interview is the role piece. The role piece says, Bob, here's what the role is. Here's the task. Here's the expectations. Here's what it looks to win or lose. And here are the behaviors that I'm looking for. Does this feel like this is still a match for you? He says yes. And you're going to say, well, here are my concerns. Talk to me about these concerns. Bob, you're an introvert, but you're going to have to spend half of your day doing this. And you might say, I've been spending 3/4 of my day doing it for the last 5 years of this job. It's fine. I'm doing great. Talk to my boss. Great. You wrap it all up. You ask yourself the question, is this a go forward or not a go forward? If it's a go forward, the next step is actually not your job. It's the candidate's job. And that's where you ask them to check your references. You're going to go back to somebody and say, Bob, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 people in the company. I would like you to reach out to those people and talk to them about their experiences working here. Ask what it's like to work with me directly. How do they win? How do they lose? I want them to get to know you, and I want you to get to know them. I'm going to give you their information. You need to reach out to them, schedule a time to talk, spend 20 to 30 minutes talking to each one of them. When it's done, I want you to reach out to me and let me know that you completed it and what you learned. Does that seem fair? Bob, how long until you think you could get this done? He says a week. That's awesome. When that's done, Bob, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to check your references. I want you to give me 5 personal references and 5 business references, personal, friends, people that you haven't worked with. 5 business, these are people that you worked for or worked with that I can reach out to and have a conversation about what it's like to work with you. When you're doing those reference checks, you're checking to see if everything you've learned so far is accurate. When he's doing his reference checks, he's validating that you're a great company and a great person to work with. He is also getting interviewed by 5 people in your company. They're going to give you the high five that this is the right
So
hire.
you're going back to those people, or do they just have the expectations to come to you and let you know about how Bob did on their calls and what their thoughts are?
It happens so often in our company. Bob, you probably get reached out to all the time.
Every day. I mean, almost every day I've got something on my calendar that's to talk to some candidate that's coming into our world, yeah.
We make them do it. Now, if they don't get it done right away, it tells me something about them. They're not super interested in the role. They're not accountable if they don't try hard. I learn a lot in this process. By this point, I am probably 80% confident that this is a great hire. The very last step is the commitment interview, where I go over my standards, expectations, what it's like to win with me, what it's like to lose with me, what they expect from me. Do they have any hesitations? When they would like to start? I'll talk about compensation and is it a win or not a win? All the details. And then I'll let them know that I'll follow up today's session, since we both have already high-fived and agreed on everything, with a simple letter covering everything we talked about that I want you to sign and get back to me by the end of the day. I don't send them an offer for them to consider. We've already talked about it. They've already agreed that we already have a timeline. They're going to sign the offer. We're going to high five, and it's a done deal. That make sense?
Yeah.
Once you've done this, you've completed the hiring process. Like we said in the first one, you don't have to use our process, but you have to have one. A documented step-by-step plan that is an important, documented, organized process to make sure that you only bring talent into your company.
It's going to take emotion out of the conversation.
Going to protect you legally, help you find talent. And the more you do this, the better you're going to get, the easier the questions are going to come out, and the better candidates you're going to dig up.
All right, Ben, so we've found talent. We've now hired talent. What are we going to talk about on the next episode as we continue the talent series?
The next step in the talent series is launching talent.
Ooh.
How do you get somebody from day 1 to day 90 for them to be successful and ready to truly own the role, which we're going to talk about next.
All right, folks, make sure if you want to know how to win with Ben, you hang on. Don't stop the podcast yet. I got a tip for you at the end. But make sure you've joined us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/win-make-give, where we're going to keep these conversations going and help you hire the best possible talent for your world and help Bob find the talent that's in our Facebook group that wants to come work in his world. Okay? We want you to share this with everybody. Now, here you go. Ben mentioned in that last step, he talks with everybody on how to win with him. If you want to know how to win with Ben Kinney, scroll back on your podcast app to season 1, episode 27, where Ben tells you exactly how to win with him. You never know how far that might get you by re-listening to that episode. And until our next episode in the Talent Series, as always, do good.